the headline of this article is, I had the perfect childhood. What was it about me that made me an alcoholic? And then the subheading is, while some link certain personality traits to addiction, one woman puts it down to something in the brain that means we're unable to stop. Now, I thought this was super interesting, and I've just realized that somehow I was able to read the whole article the other day when I got it out. Maybe I was a test allowed to read it. And because it's the Telegraph, they want me to pay, and they can go fuck themselves. I'm not going to pay. But ultimately, she went on to say that, listen, she's had she had the most perfect upbringing and the perfect childhood, and her mum and dad loved her very much. And I thought it was interesting. For me, let me just say this from the beginning. For me, that's a little bit of a red flag when anybody's got any kind of neurotic struggle or addiction and they say it was the perfect childhood and my mum and dad loved me very much. I'm always a little bit like, yeah, well, let's see. And by the way, to have experienced the kind of trauma and the struggles that could impact you when you were a child, you don't necessarily have needed horrible parents, right? You could have felt like you weren't loved because of the way that love was conveyed and how you were able to receive it, for example. So I'm always skeptical when somebody says I had the perfect childhood. And what I think is interesting about this lady, and I'm not going to say her name, but she's 68 and had an idyllic childhood in the Surrey market town of Staines. She goes on to talk about some of her greatest memories of how she used to love sitting at the bar with her mum and dad in the pub. And I know it was a different world back then, and lots of us spent a lot of time in pubs. But I'm straight away thinking, well, that you grew up in a bit of a drinking culture and a bit of environment if you liked sitting at the bar. And it goes on to say that she's sober now, but in the past she's had to detox 3 times. And her point was like, look, my childhood was so great. There's just something in my brain that means that I can't stop. Now, I do think that there's a genetic component when it comes to addiction. For me, my belief is that that's our level of sensitivity. Okay, my level of sensitivity, for me, I think is a big distinguisher of the risk factors of me becoming an addict. I definitely feel that there is something in my brain that makes me when the fucking dopamine and all your chemicals that people love getting involved in and talking about, that's not my bag, but all of that stuff. I definitely think that my brain is slightly different in that way. Was that through injury when I was young, and I mean emotional injury, or was I born that way? I think it's probably a cocktail and a mixture of both. But this lady says that what makes her an alcoholic is something in her brain that makes her not be able to stop. I would argue, what is it in your brain that makes you start? Because this lady in the article, she went through 3 detoxes before she got sober. So 3 times she had to physically get herself off of alcohol. My question is, if it's just something in your brain that makes you not stop, why did you start after the first detox? Why did you start again after the second detox? What was happening in your life that after all of that ordeal drew you back to wanting to use alcohol? And I would argue that the most crazy thing an alcoholic or an addict does is have the first drink or the first drug and convince themselves that it will be different this time. And of course they do that completely sober. So as an alcoholic myself, right, I know that when I start drinking, I'm fucking rubbish at stopping, right? I'm going to go until I pass out or whatever, right? But if that was my only problem, it'd be easy. I'd just be like, well, I know that's going to happen, so I just won't do it. But that's not what happens in addiction, is it? The craziest thing that I did was when I was sober, no alcohol in my body whatsoever, is I convinced myself somehow at some subconscious level in many ways that this time it was going to be different. So that's nothing to do with not being able to stop. That's something to do with my life, something to do with the ways that I feel. People talk about cravings all of the time, right? And people act as if people say, I'll do this to deal with your cravings, right? If your problem is sugar, people will say, eat this because it'll deal with your craving. It fucking won't. Because a craving for alcohol is not alcohol. It's not the power in alcohol. It's not something in alcohol that's calling me and it's unstoppable and I can't break free from it. That's not what it is. That's not craving. A craving is me running away from something. It's a feeling inside me in this moment that I feel like I can't deal with, and that I believe there is a solution to that in alcohol over there.